Hey Optimancers, Chris here. So today I am ranking the Player's Handbook racial options on this tier chart right here. This is part 1 of what's going to be a 5-part series, but I did do a preview video that I released yesterday where I go over the criteria for how this tier ranking is going to work, and I'm going to link it up above, so if you haven't seen it, check it out, then come back. Now they say fame can be a double-edged sword. And yeah, sure, the fans you accumulate can improve your self-confidence, and there are opportunities it opens up that can be life-changing. But on the other hand, it can be difficult to maintain your privacy. It can create expectations from the public on how you should act, no matter what you do. You'll always wonder if your friends are really your friends, or if they just wanted to be near somebody famous. The following supporters decided the rewards were worth the consequences because they clicked the link in the video description to support this channel at the mage level, where their names are displayed and read by me, resulting in immediate, instant fame. Hey Mr. Wonderful, Arden, Babrak, Blue Wolf, Blue Eyes White 7, Condor, John D, Descarpus 9, El Conquistadorito, Eric H, Falcon Neal, Glenn Wilson, Jared Huberger, John Wayne, Joseph Hall, Joseph Robideau, Joseph Rogers, Joshua Doring, Wu Carl Kong, Lila Corpsegrave, Makutu, Lone Pilgrim, Maddie, Michael Michelle, Moxie, Nemo, Prometheo NTG, Purge Thunder, Reichenstahl, Ryan Wilmot, Samwise, Shane and Todd Beyond, Earshine, The Noam Chomsky, Third, Valentin, and Wade. An additional thank you to all my patrons, who all have the opportunity to see these videos early, by the way, and without YouTube ads. Let's get started. The rest of you should already know what's happening here. Instead of just giving my rankings based on my instincts, instead I'm assigning values to features as outlined in my previous video, and we're going to rank all the Player's Handbook races, and there's going to be some surprises today. I'm going to go over them from the lowest ranking to the highest, and I really don't think I need to say more than that, so let's get to the list. Oh, and as I mentioned, there are some rankings that are pretty shocking, and if you thought the vanilla human or the dragonborn would end up with the lowest score in the Player's Handbook, I did too. We were both wrong. Now, I know this is not going to be popular, but the lowest ranking race in the Player's Handbook, and in fact this entire list, number 79 of 79, is the rock gnome. Here's how it happened. So I went through the features. First we have darkvision, that's a standard 10 points. Then we have 25-foot movement speed, and that's minus 20 points. So we're now down to minus 10. And if you don't think a 25 movement speed is a significant drawback, you probably don't play on a grid, and that's fine. But as someone who plays a lot of halflings, I play on a grid with a 25 movement speed all the time, and I think minus 20 is right about where it should be. Then we have Gnome Cunning. Now, my value chart says advantage on saving throws grants anywhere from 1 to 35 points, depending on the frequency we can expect that advantage to come up. We have a race where they have advantage to every intelligence, wisdom, or charisma saving throw. We have multiple races that have advantage to every spell saving throw. In this case, we have 3 saves just for magic spells, and only one of them is really common. But you know what? It's still really good. So I gave it 25 out of a possible 35 points for this kind of feature. And then we have Artificer's Lore. Whenever you make a history check related to magic items, alchemical objects, or technological devices, you add twice your proficiency bonus. This is a ribbon feature. That means anywhere from 1 to 9 points. I assigned it 5. I thought that was fair. Then we have Tinker. And I'm not reading this whole bit here, but you know this one. They make little clockwork toys that have minor effects. I'd consider it similarly valued to a middle-of-the-road cantrip, so I gave it 5 points. So we have 10 for Darkvision, minus 20 for Speed, 25 for Gnome Cunning, 5 for Artificer's Lore, and 5 for Tinker. Added together, that's 25. It's definitely lower than I expected, but that's where it ended up, so it goes on the D rank. Now you might notice I placed it a fair bit on the right side on the D rank, and that's because we need lots of room. And yeah, let's move on. The next one won't be a surprise. Number 14 of 15 is the Dragonborn. Let's go through it. The Breath Weapon. It's just not very good. But, at low levels it can be okay, especially if you can get multiple creatures at once. I figure 10 points is about right. The same overall value as, say, having 60 foot of dark vision, which of course, infamously, Dragonborns don't get. And then we have damage resistance, and we get to pick which type. The highest valued selections here are fire or poison, and each is worth 17 points. So we get 17 for the resistance, and then 10 for the breath weapon, and that is it. 27 points, and we're done. D tier, right beside our poor rock gnome. And that will bring us to number 13 of 15, and again, this one is no surprise. The vanilla, non-variant human. +1 to every ability score nets us 30 points, and we are done. D tier, very easy. Our 12th place is actually technically tied with a human at 30 points. This might have been a surprise before you started this video, but seeing where the rock gnome was, you shouldn't be surprised anymore. It's going to be the forest gnome. Dark vision will get us 10 points, speed for -20, gnome cunning 25, and then we get natural illusionist, which gives us one of the best cantrips, arguably the best cantrip. So it would get a maximum value of 10, but we don't get to choose our casting ability score. So I figured I probably should shave a couple points off, so I'm giving it an 8. And then finally we get Speak with Small Beasts, which is a pretty decent ribbon feature. It is definitely a ribbon feature though. I put it on the slightly higher end of ribbon features for 7 points. And that gives us a total of 30, tied with the human. So we'll put it right beside, though it could have been on either side of the human. I mentioned in my last video, Player's Handbook races did not do well, and we are just getting started. 11th place is the Drow Elf. And if you think about it, you should know why. So they have 120 foot dark vision, that's 15 points. Keen Senses is worth 4. Fey Ancestry is worth 10. Trance is worth 10. Then we have Drow Magic. And this one has some problems compared to other similar racial features. We don't pick our ability score that we're casting with. We don't get to use spell slots for these spells. And the list here is, it's fine, but these aren't top rank spells. Dancing Lights, I gave 4 points. Fairy Fire is pretty good. I gave it 15. And another 15 for Darkness. And that's 34 points altogether. So we're at a very respectable 73 points total, but now we need to apply a negative for sunlight sensitivity. And you know what? It is pretty bad. I assigned -30 for sunlight sensitivity, and I think I wasn't too harsh. Then our standard 1 point per weapon proficiency, so we're adding 3 more, and that will bring us to a total of 46 points. That puts them in D tier, and they will be tied with our next race. And next, we have another elf. Number 10 is the High Elf. The High Elf was doing okay when it was just the Player's Handbook, but there's just such better elf choices now. We have Dark Vision for 10 points, Keen Senses for 4 points, Fey Ancestry for 10 points, Trance is worth 10 points. We get a cantrip from the wizard list, which is good, but we don't get to choose the ability score. So just like with the Forest Gnome, I lowered it from the maximum of 10 for a cantrip to 8. And then we have weapon training, 4 weapons, 4 points. And we add it up, 10 plus 4 plus 10 plus 10 plus 8 plus 4. That's 46 points. That puts the High Elf in D tier. A whole lot of Player's Handbook races ending up at D tier. The final one of them is number 9, the Tiefling. Yeah, the Tiefling ended up pretty low. So Dark Vision, of course, is 10 points. Then we get Hellish Resistance, and that's Fire Resistance, and that is worth 17. Finally, we get Infernal Legacy, and there are a few issues here, and we kind of went over them a little bit with the Drow Elf. You can't use the spell slots to cast the spells, can't pick your casting ability score, and really, these are probably even worse spells. Darkness is the same. I gave it 15 for the Drow. I'm going to give it 15 here. But Thaumaturgy, I'm just giving 2 points. And Hellish Rebuke, I'll give it 5. So that's 22 points total. So we have 17 for Fire Resistance, 10 for Dark Vision, and we're at 49 points. And this is the high end of D tier. 15 races in the Player's Handbook, and 7 of them in D tier. These races, what we find is, as new books come out, they just don't hold up anymore. The next one, though, is gonna ruffle some feathers. But 8th is the Half Elf. I ranked it higher myself, but I gotta say, once I did the calculations, this is where it ends up. So we have an extra +1 to an ability score, that's a 20 point value. Fey Ancestry is worth 10. Darkvision is worth 10. And we get 2 free skills, and we get to pick them, and that is 5 each for 10. 20, 30, 40, 50. 50 points total. It's not that high, but high enough to squeak onto C tier. And yep, we're going to need to leave some space, because it's not going to be alone there. Number 7 is the half-orc. And I have to say, I think I stopped seeing half-orcs once the orc in Monsters of the Multiverse was published. I mean, you give a race relentless endurance, and then something else pretty good, and why are you going to play a half-orc? So we got Dark Vision, that's 10 points. Menacing, 4 points. Relentless Endurance is good, and it comes up a lot. I gave it 25 points. Savage Attacks doesn't come up every session, but it does come up here or there, and I figure it's still worth 15 points. So we end up with 10 plus 4 plus 25 plus 15, and that's 54 points. That's the lower side of C rank. Number 6 is the Hill Dwarf. So we have minus 10 for the speed because of the heavy armor exception. Then Dark Vision is 10, so we're back to 0. And then Dwarven Resilience adds up. We get 17 points for poison resistance, but also another 10 points for the advantage on saving throws against being poisoned. So Dwarven Resilience actually adds up to 27 points. Then we have Dwarven Combat Training, 4 weapons, 4 points. Then Tool Proficiency, 1 point. Stone Cutting. You know, and I know, this is very much ribbon, 3 points. And then Toughness. I gave this feature 20 points. It's not super powerful, but it's definitely significant. I figured of similar value to a +1 in an ability score. So we have minus 10, then plus 10 brings us to 0. 27 for Dwarven Resilience, 4 for Dwarven Combat Training, 1 for the Tool Proficiency, 3 for Stone Cutting, and 20 for Toughness. That's 55 points. And the Hill Dwarf ranks C tier. Number 5 is the Lightfoot Halfling. We start with a big hit for that 25-foot movement speed. That's minus 20. Then Lucky. Of course, this is the big halfling feature. If you play a halfling, it's for Lucky. I gave it 50. I think it's great. If you don't, that's your opinion, and you're wrong. Brave is advantage on saves versus fear, and you can probably guess 10 points. Halfling Nimbleness is okay, but not that big a deal, 10 points. And Naturally Stealthy is good, but it's really kind of for rogues, 10 points. And we add it up and we get 60 points, which leaves us still on C tier, but on the higher end of C tier. And we are on to the 4th best player's handbook race, and we are going to finally get into the B tier, middle of the road, and that's the Mountain Dwarf. And like the half-elf, I know some people figure they should be higher. I am happy with its position. Speed of 25, but the heavy armor thing, minus 10 points. Dark Vision gives us 10 points, and we're back to 0. Dwarven Resilience, that we went over already, it adds up to 27 points. Then Dwarven Combat Training, 4 weapons, 4 points, we're up to 31. Tool Proficiency, 1 point, we're up to 32. Stone Cutting is 3 points, we're now at 35. Then we get 1 extra ability score bonus, that's worth 20 points, that brings us to 55. And Dwarven Armor Training is 10 more for a grand total of 65. Enough to get the Mountain Dwarf into B rank territory. There it is right there, we need room for one more race. And that race is the Wood Elf. Dark Vision 10, Keen Senses is worth 4, Fey Ancestry is worth 10, Trance is 10, then Elf Weapon Training is 4, Fleet of Foot, big buff, that gets you 20 points. And Mask of the Wild, I said 10 points. And that gives us a total of 68 points, and that is a solid B tier ranking. And that leaves 2 races. And you know which race is going to be number 1, right? So that leaves one option for number 2, and that is the Stout Halfling. Speed is a 20-point penalty, so we're at minus 20. But we have Lucky for 50, so we're up to 30. Then we have Brave for 10, and now we're up to 40. And then Halfling Nimbleness is 10, so we're up to 50. And then Stout Resilience, which, despite the different name, is identical to what the dwarves get. It's the same score. 17 for the resistance and 10 for the saving throw advantage, and we are up to 77 points. And 77 points puts the Stout Halfling in A tier. And then we have number 1 in the player's handbook, and this should be no surprise to anybody, the Variant Human. We get a minus 20 penalty for having only +2 to ability scores, but then we get the free feat. And the feat is worth 125 points. Brings us up to 105. And then we get a free skill, and we get to choose. So that is worth 5, and we are up to 110. And that puts the variant human comfortably in S tier. But as you can see, S tier is going to go up to 135 points, a fair bit higher than the variant human. Fact is there's just been a lot of potent races since then, and that variant human better get ready to be moving to the right. But what you see here are the final tier rankings for the Player's Handbook races. In the next video in this series, we do the first half of Monsters of the Multiverse, and that will be 17 more races. And guess what? Monsters of the Multiverse races really place well on the tier rankings. So I hope you'll join me for that. Otherwise, until next time, I am going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks everybody, and I will talk to you soon.